Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to Crime Zone. A group of Good Samaritans are being praised for their quick thinking and decisive action this week after they came to the defense of a man who might otherwise have been killed during the middle of a terrifying stabbing attack. The whole thing began shortly before 6 p.m. on June 11th, when the 39-year-old victim, who has not been identified by name, stumbled into Milo Coffee Shop in Manhattan's Washington Heights neighborhood. After entering the business, the shirtless man was witnessed walking around a corner and crouching down on the ground in an obvious attempt to hide. The reason behind his behavior became clear just moments later when 4 people walked in behind him. The group went right over to the cowering man and began stabbing him in the neck. Surveillance footage taken from both inside and outside the coffee shop captured what happened next. Though multiple people attempted to flee the violence, several others, both customers and employees, rushed to the victim's defense. Arming themselves with stools, chairs, and whatever else they could get their hands on, the group of Good Samaritans fought with the 4 suspects and were able to push them back enough to the point that they fled the scene. When emergency responders arrived minutes later, the 39-year-old victim was rushed to a hospital in critical condition, but alive. At the time of this recording, none of the attackers have been identified or arrested, but police say that they are still searching for them. The motive behind the brazen attack, likewise, remains a mystery. Authorities in Hendricks County, Indiana say that a 38-year-old fast food worker is facing a number of charges this week after he allegedly broke into his female co-worker's house during the middle of the night, then told police he was there to carry out an exorcism. The whole thing began at around 1:20 a.m. on June 11th when police in the town of Avon received a 911 call from the unidentified female victim. Disturbingly, the woman said that someone had broken into her home and that he was screaming and destroying things. When officers arrived at the property, located on the 1300 block of Fur Lane, they found a white 2005 Toyota Prius idling in the driveway. No one was inside, and they were quickly met by the female homeowner who said that the suspect was her co-worker from Chick-fil-A, 38-year-old Robert Nalker. Police yelled out to Nalker, who eventually came outside. He was reportedly covered in blood and told them that he had lost his sunglasses. He also claimed that he, quote, had to break in the window and that he was there to perform an exorcism. He elaborated on these bizarre statements after being placed in handcuffs, repeatedly stating that the female victim hadn't been harmed, but that she was, quote, possessed. He also pleaded with the officers to help finish what he had started. He said that they needed to find the CD he brought with him and to, quote, play number 3. That will save her. Things apparently only got stranger when police actually went into the house. Inside, they found that a window had been smashed close to the back door, which was clearly how Nalker got inside. A trail of blood led from the window to a kitchen island where a CD and case that were also covered in blood were located. The blood trail continued to the basement, where stereo equipment had reportedly been thrown around and broken. Finally, there was a projector screen where Nalker looked like he had tried to leave a message in blood, though had only managed to write the letter R. After speaking more with the female victim, police learned that she had known Nalker for more than 20 years and that they had worked together at Chick-fil-A for quite some time. She said that prior to the break-in, Nalker was sending her strange messages about, quote, not listening to Spotify. Nalker was taken to a nearby hospital after the incident, both to be treated for injuries and for a mental health evaluation. Perhaps unsurprisingly, he was admitted after it was determined that he was mentally unstable. At the time of this recording, the 38-year-old has not been formally arrested, though authorities were able to secure a warrant for charges against him. These charges include felony residential entry, criminal mischief, and disorderly conduct. Authorities in Travis County, Texas say that a car theft case took a strange and somewhat amusing turn last week when police arrested their suspect only to discover he had quite the unusual name. It all started sometime on June 4th when police spotted a vehicle driving on Congress Avenue near Radham Lane in Austin. The vehicle stopped at a commercial address that officers recognized as being a known hub for criminal activity, specifically as a place where stolen cars had previously been recovered. Sure enough, when they ran the vehicle's plates, they discovered that it had been stolen the day before, and they arrested the 37-year-old man behind the wheel. While all of this was pretty standard, that changed when police got a look at the man's identification. His legal name was Optimus Prime Blakely. Yes, that's Optimus Prime as in the leader of the Autobots from Transformers. In case you were wondering, no, he wasn't in a red and blue semi-truck. The stolen vehicle was actually a white Mercedes. Anyway, according to police, Old Optimus has now been charged with unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, and as of a few days ago was being held at the Travis County Correctional Complex on an $8,000 bond. If you ask us, he might also want to consider another name change, maybe to Megatron, because stealing cars just feels more on brand for a Decepticon. Representatives from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation say that a 39-year-old man is facing more than 24 charges this week after he allegedly shot and killed a man on a transit bus before hijacking the vehicle and leading authorities on a wild chase. The whole thing started around 4:30 p.m. on June 11th, when police in Atlanta began receiving reports about a possible hijacking on a Gwinnett County transit bus. Multiple passengers, as well as their family members, began calling 911 to report that they were being held hostage by a man who had just shot someone aboard the bus that they were on. The bus had just left the city's Peachtree Center district a few minutes earlier and was supposed to be headed for a Gwinnett County park and ride lot about 26 miles away. However, witnesses said that two men on the bus had gotten into an argument shortly after they departed. One of those men, 58-year-old Ernest Bird Jr., allegedly pulled out a gun, which the second man, 39-year-old Joseph Greer, managed to wrestle away from him. Greer reportedly shot Bird before pointing the weapon at other passengers and walking up to the front of the bus. He then held the gun to the driver's head and threatened to shoot him as well if he didn't continue going. Police were quick to respond to the area where the initial calls had been made on Ivan Allen Jr. Boulevard Northeast. However, the bus quickly pulled onto Interstate 85 and began speeding away. A chase began, during which the bus weaved in and out of traffic and struck multiple other vehicles on the road, including police patrol cars. It wasn't until roughly 40 minutes later that authorities were finally able to disable the hijacked bus. The pursuit finally came to an end near Hugh Howell Road in DeKalb County after spike strips were deployed and a Georgia state trooper fired a shot at the bus's engine compartment. Once the bus was brought to a stop, Greer was arrested. Thankfully, 16 of the 17 people on the bus at the time, including the driver, were rescued. However, Bird later died of his injuries at a local hospital. Greer is now facing more than 24 charges in connection with the hijacking and hostage situation, including murder, 14 counts of kidnapping, 13 counts of aggravated assault, hijacking a motor vehicle, and possession of a firearm. In an equally dark and strange twist, police say that Greer was a witness to another shooting incident the same afternoon that the bus incident took place. In fact, it may at least partially explain why Greer acted the way he did. According to reports, just over 2 hours earlier, Greer was at the Peachtree Center Mall when a 34-year-old man named Jeremy Malone shot 3 people during a dispute with another man in the building's food court. After witnessing the incident, Greer was actually interviewed as a witness by local media, where he made what now seem like incredibly ominous statements. During the interview, Greer appears agitated, and it's clear that he's having a difficult time staying focused. When asked about what happened, he goes on tangents about a number of things, including his banking history and criminal record, and talks about not wanting to be a snitch. What stands out most, though, are the details he gives about his mental health. He states that he is bipolar and he has been off his medication for 2 weeks. He also mentions that he was, quote, in an extreme mode when the food court shooting took place. Greer has 19 prior arrests, including multiple crimes which were reportedly committed with guns or knives. In an interview, a family member said that the 39-year-old is normally calm and very nice, but has struggled with mental health issues for at least 16 years. At the time of this week's incident, the family member stated that he had recently lost his job, had stopped following his mental health treatment plan, and wasn't sleeping. At the time of this recording, Greer remains in custody. Thankfully, it has been reported that all of the victims of the food court shooting are expected to survive. Representatives from New Mexico's Albuquerque Police Department say that a 46-year-old wannabe arsonist recently got hit with quite the amusing bit of instant karma when he allegedly tried to burn down his ex-girlfriend's house, only to end up setting himself on fire instead. The bizarre and terrifying incident took place shortly before midnight on May 24th, when Albuquerque police were called about a potential arson case. They were alerted by a female victim who stated that her boyfriend, 46-year-old Artemio Sanchez Ortega, had just come to her home and tried to set the place on fire. When police and firefighters arrived at the scene, they were quickly able to extinguish the blaze. Though it had done damage to vehicles in the woman's gated front yard, thankfully the fire hadn't reached her house, especially because she and her children had been inside at the time. While the woman was able to show officers several phone calls from earlier that night made by the suspect, who she said had clearly been drinking, even more conclusive evidence soon emerged. It was video footage shot by her neighbor's surveillance camera across the street that captured the bumbling crime as it unfolded. In the footage, a man, alleged to be Ortega, can be seen walking down the street nonchalantly with a red gas can. However, the man's calm demeanor quickly gives way to panic after he hops over the front gate of the victim's home and isn't careful with where he's splashing the accelerant. As soon as he attempts to light it, the entire front yard goes up in flames, along with the man's own clothing. As the camera footage refocuses from the sudden blast, the suspect can be seen clinging to the fence once again. After tripping over his own feet, he runs down the street away from the scene while still on fire. Just top-tier comedy, folks. Unfortunately, at the time of this recording, police still haven't been able to find Ortega. He is now wanted on arson charges and is believed to be driving a white Chevy Silverado with Texas license plate 1CO2721. Anyone with information is asked to reach out to the Albuquerque police. Representatives from the Louisiana State Police say that 2 suspects have been arrested and are facing multiple charges this week following a terrifying double murder and child kidnapping case, which investigators say they now have reason to believe could be related to human trafficking. The chilling incident began at around 8 a.m. on June 13th, when police in Louisiana's Tangipahoa Parish were called to a trailer property in the community of Loranger. They were contacted by the father of 35-year-old Callie Brunette, who said that he had just found his daughter's lifeless body inside of a bedroom there. When officers arrived at the home, they confirmed the awful discovery. So far, Callie's cause of death has not been released, though police almost immediately concluded that the situation was a homicide, later revealing that blood was found everywhere at the scene. They also learned that Callie had not been heard from for at least 2 days before her body was found. Unfortunately, this was just the beginning of the nightmarish situation, as Callie's 2 young daughters, 6-year-old Jaylee and 4-year-old Erin Burnett, were nowhere to be found. An Amber Alert was released for the girls, with police quickly identifying a suspect in the case, Callie's on-again, off-again boyfriend, 36-year-old Daniel Callahan. Because Callie's vehicle was also missing, they speculated that Callahan had killed the 35-year-old mother before fleeing the scene in her car with the 2 girls. Following the Amber Alert, several sightings of Callie's stolen black 2012 Chrysler 200 were reported across the state line in Mississippi. The vehicle appeared to be traveling north, and these reports were accompanied by tips a few hours later about a suspicious man matching Callahan's description who appeared to be trying to enter multiple homes in the city of Jackson. U.S. Marshals jumped on these leads and were able to find Callahan in Jackson. After a brief car chase, they were able to arrest the 36-year-old after following him to a nearby wooded property. 6-year-old Jaylee was found wounded but alive in the vehicle at the time of the arrest, though heartbreakingly, 4-year-old Erin was found dead a few yards away. Right now, her cause of death has also not been released. A second suspect, a 32-year-old woman named Victoria Cox, was also arrested around this same time. While the entire disturbing series of events is still very much under investigation at the time of this recording, authorities say that they believe that Callie Burnett's death was the result of some kind of domestic violence incident that spiraled out of control between her and Callahan. After that, it's alleged that Callahan kidnapped the two girls. His exact motives are still unconfirmed, though police say that they are now exploring the possibility that the crime is connected to human trafficking. This is reportedly due in part to the fact that several small animal cages were found at the Mississippi crime scene. For his part, Callahan blamed the kidnappings and killings on mental illness, saying that he was, quote, crazy and that he deserved to be put to death for what he had done. In a statement outside of police headquarters in Jackson the day after his arrest, he told the media, quote, I have no reason for what I did. All I know is I was sober and only on Lexapro and off Lexapro, and I have also been diagnosed with multiple personality disorder. I have told them everything I did, and I have agreed not to fight it. For what I did, lethal injection is the easiest thing for me. He also went on to state that he was, quote, not pretending to be crazy. I am certified. I have only been out of the nut house for 2 weeks. According to reports, Callahan has a lengthy criminal history which includes felony burglary, theft, aggravated battery, simple burglary, and simple assault. Residents of a Louisiana town where he used to live also told the media that he was known for walking around naked with a crossbow. Callahan has now been charged with first-degree murder, aggravated kidnapping, armed robbery, and capital murder amongst other offenses in connection with this week's incident. His alleged accomplice, Victoria Cox, has been charged with capital murder and sexual assault. The situation is still developing. Authorities in Hillsborough County, Florida say that 3 people are dead this week and a police deputy has been injured following a disturbing and dramatic shootout at a residence where a teen allegedly killed his parents before firing at police. The situation began shortly after 11 p.m. on June 15th, when Hillsborough County Police received a frantic 911 call from a 48-year-old woman named Rebecca Ann Themelis. Rebecca stated that her husband, 51-year-old Christos Byron Themelis, had just been shot by their 19-year-old son, Christos Themelis Jr. Chillingly, as Rebecca was on the phone with 911 operators, more gunshots could reportedly be heard in the background. When officers arrived at the property on the 14,000 block of Cactus Wren Place, they found Rebecca in the front yard with the 19-year-old alleged shooter. Police tried to get Rebecca to safety. However, as she was walking towards them, Themelis Jr. reportedly pulled out his weapon and shot his mother in the back of the head. Immediately afterwards, he began firing at police. During the exchange of gunfire, Themelis Jr. injured a 26-year-old Hillsborough County deputy named Shane McGow. McGow was struck in the leg by a bullet and could be heard in harrowing body cam footage calling out to his fellow officers that he had been hit. Themelis Jr. was also hit and retreated back into the house. A short time later, members of the SWAT team entered the property, where they discovered the body of both Themelis Jr. and his father. The 19-year-old reportedly died from the injuries he sustained during the shootout. At the time of this recording, police say that they are still piecing together exactly what led to the awful situation, though they also revealed that this was far from their first visit to the property. According to reports, officers had been called to the Tampa residence at least 10 times prior to the deadly shooting, with a majority of these calls being related to mental health issues that Themelis Jr. suffered from. Many of these incidents also apparently involved the 19-year-old committing violence towards his parents. One of the things that police say that they are still investigating is where Themelis Jr. obtained the gun used in this week's crime. Because there was an active risk protection order against him, all of his weapons had previously been seized. At the time of this recording, it's been said that the wounded deputy, Shane McGow, is recovering well. If you're a regular viewer of our Crimes of the Week series, then you might remember that last summer we brought you the heartbreaking story of Rachel Morin. Rachel was a 37-year-old woman from Harford County, Maryland, who abruptly vanished on August 5th, 2023. The mother of 5 was reported missing by her boyfriend after she failed to return home from an evening run along the Ma and Pa Trail in the town of Bel Air. Authorities immediately launched a search for Rachel, one which came to a horrifying end early the following afternoon. Her nude and lifeless body was found in a culvert in the woods just off a section of the trail. According to reports, she showed signs of having been badly beaten. If you'll recall, just a few days into the murder investigation, police announced a major break in the case. DNA evidence found with Rachel's body had returned a surprise hit in the CODIS database. It matched evidence recovered from the scene of a disturbing crime that had taken place months earlier on the opposite side of the country. In that incident, which happened in March of 2023, a family in Los Angeles, California, were the victims of a terrifying late-night home invasion. During the attack, multiple people were left injured, including a mother and her 9-year-old child. Though that case was also still unsolved, the perpetrator had left behind a hat with his DNA in it while being chased from the house. There was also surveillance footage which provided police with a valuable look at the criminal. Over the next few months, the investigation continued, with multiple law enforcement agencies working in collaboration with one another. According to officials, this was especially true once authorities found reason to believe that the culprit was not a U.S. citizen. New composite sketches of the suspect were released back in February of this year. However, at the time of our last update, the man still had yet to be identified. Well, thankfully, we can now finally report that this is no longer the case. While police have not yet revealed exactly how the final pieces of the puzzle fell into place, they have stated that the breakthrough involved more DNA evidence as well as genetic genealogy. It happened towards the end of May of this year, right around what would have been Rachel's 38th birthday. The new evidence identified the alleged killer as a 23-year-old from El Salvador named Victor Antonio Martinez Hernandez. When officials reached out to their law enforcement counterparts in El Salvador, they learned that the 23-year-old was eluding justice there too. In addition to having alleged gang ties, Hernandez was reportedly wanted for the murder of another young woman. According to an announcement this week, Hernandez allegedly fled El Salvador following the murder in January of 2023, entering the United States illegally a month later. Disturbingly, just weeks after arriving in the country, he allegedly committed that home invasion in California before ultimately killing Rachel in August. Police say that they are still looking into how Hernandez was able to stay on the run for so long, but it's believed that part of the reason was because he remained on the move. Indeed, when he was finally arrested this week, he was nowhere near either of the two previous crime scenes. Officials say that he was taken into custody late on June 14th while he was at a bar in Tulsa, Oklahoma. At the time of this recording, Hernandez has been charged with first-degree murder and first-degree rape. Following the announcement, Rachel's family came out to express their gratitude towards law enforcement, saying that they had been supported every step of the way. In a statement, her mother, Patricia, said in part, quote, "At one point, when things seemed like really bleak and hopeless, the lead detective said to me, he said, 'Patience will win in the end.' And that's what investigators have been doing. They've been diligent, working very hard, and they've been patiently working through all the leads. It's because of that that we have an arrest today. So I'm very thankful and just very grateful to these men." Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you'd consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.